Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Live It Up, the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We cover health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life that feels good, because that's what we all ultimately want. We want to feel good in our life. I'm your host and coach, Fletcher Ellingson. For those of you who are new to the program, my better half, by a long shot, the woman who keeps me accountable on the straight and narrow, is my inspiration and my dream life companion. Well, she'll be joining us later on in the show to educate us on this episode's health topic. She told me what we're going to be talking about, but believe you me, I have no idea what she meant when she said we were going to be talking about fatty liver. Maybe you know what that means, but I don't. She says it's a common condition for many people, and it's not something you want. She'll tell us what it is, the consequences of it, and what we can do about it. Remember, health is the first wealth, so stick around for that. But before we go any further, I want to remind you that if you have questions you'd like me to answer on or off the air, you can email those directly to me at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com. You don't need to suffer and try to figure everything out on your own. There are answers and solutions and ways to get unstuck and move forward powerfully. I want to remind you also that you can visit me at my website, fletcherellingson.com, or thepracticeofeelinggood.com. I've got all sorts of free resources there you can check out. Grab a free copy of my ebook. You can take a happiness quiz there, get a bird's eye view of how life is going, and I'll personally send you feedback on the results. Or you can check out my podcast there. It's a great way to stay in this conversation, because this conversation, personal development, it's a game changer. So before we go to commercial, we're going to take an email and give a little bit of coaching advice. So today's email says, Fletcher, I think you are full of it. How is it possible to stay optimistic and positive when so many terrible things are happening? I can look at my immediate family and I see we don't have enough money for what we want to do to pay our bills. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. Millions of Americans are still out of work. There's disruption to the global supply chain. Our government is facing shutdown because it's reached its debt ceiling. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. The US dollar is worth less than it ever has been, and the world is seeing unprecedented global warming. Not to mention unprecedented wildfires, floods, and freezing winters. My question is, how do you expect me to feel good amidst all of this? You talk about feeling good, maybe you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Tell me why I should and how it's possible to feel good when this is the state of our country and world. Signed, Calling Your Bluff. I love this. I love it when people get real. And as in this case, this person feels like they're calling my bluff. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for sharing this sentiment, because this is common. You're not the only one who feels like this. And frankly, I used to feel like this a lot. I thought I was positive and optimistic most of my life, but I actually found myself focusing on a lot of things that weren't working in the world. I was noticing them and became focused on them. They became what I talked about all the time. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, but number one, it doesn't feel good. And number two, it didn't serve my life. The results that I was producing in my life were reflective of what I was focused on. So I get that all these things are going on. I get that, and I'm not trying to belittle or diminish, all those things are happening in the world. And I get that you have challenges in your very personal life around finances and family. I've been there. I've been $20,000 in debt, credit card debt. I've had a family of 5, 0 income, no job, a mortgage to pay. So I get that. We're on food stamps at one point. I get it. It's real. It doesn't feel good. But unless I was willing to change my mindset, I would have stayed in all of that. changing my mindset and beginning to notice what actually is working in the world. Focusing on the things that are hopeful, focusing on the things that are going well is what turned my life around. It's why I am living now what I call my best life ever. And it has everything to do with the fact that I changed my focus. I still see that stuff is happening, but I'm instead focused on all of the good things that are happening. There's so much good stuff happening in this world, and I have nothing to do with it. Like the sun comes up right on cue every single day. Nothing to do with that. We have stores that are filled with food. I have nothing to do with that. Didn't grow the food, didn't transport the food, didn't put it into the store. Nothing to do with that. My lungs are breathing, my heart's pumping. I don't tell my body to do this. It does it by itself. There's very little actually that I do in this world, or there's very little that's going on in this world that I have anything to do with. And so I see that as an incredible blessing. I see that as like I won the lottery. Do I have challenges in my life? Absolutely. Every single day. Do I have concerns? Absolutely. I'm still learning, still failing forward. But my focus is on what's working out and what feels good. Because when I focus on that stuff, it activates the chemicals in my head, the feel-good chemicals that then course through my body, and I feel good. And when I am in a position of feeling good, I have access to the very thing that's going to make my life work, and that's progress. When I feel good, I have access to progress. When I feel good, I have access to being creative. I have access to being connected. I have access to collaboration. I have access to vulnerability. When I'm not feeling good, when I'm like suffering and mentally suffering, I'm cut off from creativity, connection, and progress. And progress is the one thing that we want more than anything in this world. We want to feel like we're making progress. We want to feel like we're learning. We want to feel like we're connecting. And that only happens when we're in a state of feeling good. If you look back at your life, the times when you have really excelled, look at your state of mind, and I guarantee you'll find you were in a feel-good state of mind. You were feeling confident. You were feeling capable. You were feeling resourceful. You were feeling open or ready and willing. So all the stuff that you mentioned is accurate. That's all happening. But alongside that is an incredible treasure chest of other beautiful things that are happening all the time as well. And I've always got a choice on where I'm going to focus. I can either focus on the beautiful things that are happening, or I can focus on all the fearful and things that are not working out. And so my challenge to you is to begin to shift your focus to what's working out and look for the blessings, no matter how small they are. I know you can do this, and I believe in you. We're going to be right back after this commercial. We're going to come back and talk with Amy. She's going to educate us on fatty liver. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. Glad you're here, glad you're in this conversation. We're here with Amy. Hello.
Hi.
Good to see you again.
Sometimes your speaking volume scares me. Like, whoa.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a loud talker.
And I'm a low talker.
Yeah.
So we're funny together.
Yeah. All right, hey, so we're talking about fatty liver today.
Yes, which you are introducing like it's a joke. And
it's not a
not
joke.
Not a joke. It's very common.
Yes, very common.
It can lead to problems.
Yes. Just it's an odd topic to me because
yes.
I know nothing about it.
Yeah.
So let's dive into it.
Yeah, so, fatty liver is a very general term. So actually what I want to talk about in specifically is called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD. I don't know how that is a thing, but NAFLD. And so it's basically an umbrella term for people who are not chronic drinkers of alcohol, but yet they have fatty liver.
Well, that's my first question is, so you're differentiating between alcoholics and non-alcoholics, so alcoholics can get this too from drinking, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so basically like a fatty liver is an enlarged, inflamed liver. And so you can get a fatty liver from alcohol as well. And then that eventually you first have an enlarged liver from alcohol, which would be called like alcoholic hepatitis. And hepatitis is just inflammation of the liver. And then if you keep drinking or you have other things going on that are damaging your liver, then it goes from a large fatty liver, it's not really that large, a large fatty liver to a small cirrhotic liver, which is a scarred liver, which we'll talk about. So yeah, this NAFLD is increasingly common around the world, and especially in Western nations. And in the United States, it's the most common form of chronic liver disease. I mean, we see it all the time. It's affecting about 1/4 of the population, but then I would say it's probably affecting a lot more than that. People just wouldn't know they have it. Like, you just wouldn't know. And so then some people with NAFLD can go on to get NASH, which is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is when the being just fatty goes on to being an inflamed liver, and then that could eventually go to cirrhosis and scarring.
So I've heard cirrhosis, that term, and
Yes.
I have no idea what it actually is.
Yeah, so, and you skipped ahead to your second question, which is totally fine, because I think we were just going to talk about the symptoms, which I would say there are none. I've never seen a patient with symptoms of it. But anyway,
okay.
This is picked up on just like you go to the doctor's office, your liver enzymes are up. They're like, oh, your liver enzymes are up. Let's follow that along. Oh, let's get an ultrasound. Oh, the liver's fatty. That's how it gets diagnosed.
Okay, so no one's showing up and saying, ouch, my liver hurts.
No,
Okay.
not in this situation. I've never seen it. I mean, it's possible, but I just never seen it.
Got it.
So how would you know you have NAFLD? You would know because you've been going to the doctor and getting your liver checked. So cirrhosis, yeah. So cirrhosis is terrible. It's a terrible thing to have happen, and once it happens, you can't really reverse it. I mean, what your liver is amazingly regenerative and can heal itself all over the place. And I think what I remember hearing is that the liver can work off about 10% of itself. I mean,
Wow.
it's amazing. It does so much for your body. It is kind of like the guardian of the whole body, taking out toxins and dealing with blood sugar issues, protein issues, cholesterol issues. It just does so many things. And so when you have cirrhosis, basically you've had inflammation for some reason, hepatitis C, alcohol, other things, and then eventually the liver, as it's trying to repair itself, it does so by scarring. And so eventually it leads to like one big scarred liver. Not big, small. Once the liver becomes cirrhotic or scarred, it stops to work. It stops functioning, and there's really nothing else you can do about it at that point. So that's when.
So cirrhosis means scarred or scarring?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I didn't look up the root word for that, but it's something. Yeah, it's scarred down. So basically, people that have cirrhosis will start having. Probably people have known someone in the family or have seen this where their belly starts getting big. They kind of look like they're pregnant, but in a bigger way, and they can get jaundiced, and they can get swelling of their feet and legs, and they can get dilated veins on their belly as well.
Okay.
So those are people that unfortunately have a family member who has cirrhosis, and she's only in her early 40s, and so she's on a liver transplant list because there's nothing you can do once it gets to that point.
I see.
People die from that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Uplifting topic.
say again.
It's an uplifting topic.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we were going to be down here to causes.
Yeah, let's talk about what are the causes.
Yeah, so we don't exactly understand why some people develop or accumulate fat in their liver and some people don't. I remember even like 5 years ago, it's like fatty liver, gosh, I keep seeing fatty liver on ultrasound, I keep seeing it. And there wasn't even, no one even used the term NAFLD, there was just using the term NASH. And so now we just see so many of them. And in talking to Dr. Newton, who's one of the liver specialists at Confluence, they're even now like creating like a whole program for it because they're inundated with these referrals. So basically, the causes seem to be if people are overweight, but there's lots of overweight people that don't have fatty liver. So it's like we don't understand why some people that are overweight, and there are some people that I've seen that are only like 40 pounds overweight or something and they have it, where someone who's 100 pounds overweight doesn't have it. Insulin resistance, so that is the condition like that your body isn't able to deal with sugar, and that's what eventually leads to diabetes or pre-diabetes. Definitely people with diabetes, that is the biggest cause that I've seen, and people who have uncontrolled diabetes, and especially if they're overweight and they have uncontrolled diabetes, that is a big deal, because it basically all these things are inflammatory to the liver. And so having like high triglycerides, eating a lot of sugar, your liver is trying to deal with all of this, and it's inflammatory. And so what happens is it starts depositing fat in the face of this inflammation. So basically the excess either fat in the body or the sugar leads to this fatty deposition.
So you got this organ that's trying to do an incredible thing in the body. It becomes inflamed, and the lifestyle just keeps on hurting it, so to speak.
Yeah,
or
like the
impeding
standard American diet, which we eat a lot of carbs, and we tend to be heavier than other people in the world, and we have a really high rate of diabetes and pre-diabetes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's some of the causes. Let's take a break.
Okay.
And we'll come back and talk about what there is to do about it.
Okay, sounds
All right.
good.
Stay with us. Hey everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. I'm Fletcher, this is Amy, and we're talking about, what are we talking about again?
Fatty liver.
Yeah.
I'm having a chuckle about how differently our brains work.
Oh, during the commercial break we were
Yes.
having a little. But let's get back and talk about what's the process of like finding out if you've got fatty liver.
Yeah, so frequently...
Let me interrupt you for a second, because some people listening to this might be thinking like, do I have fatty liver?
Right.
So, yeah, there's nothing that they could possibly know without going to see a physician. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, if they're overweight, if they have diabetes, pre-diabetes, if they have high triglycerides, those would be the main things to ask. Sometimes hypothyroidism, especially if it's untreated. You almost always, if you have those medical problems, you're going to be having what's called a metabolic panel blood draw, usually every year. And that includes liver testing. And so what we tend to see is the ALT, AST, which are called transaminases, those start to be elevated. And then sometimes we're like, oh, sometimes diabetes is a little bit up, probably fatty liver. Let's just keep an eye on it. Let's see if once you control your diabetes, if it goes away, blah, blah, blah. That's what I usually do. And then if they stay up or if they're significantly high, we do an ultrasound that usually shows, oh, big fatty liver. Like I just had someone I talked to about it yesterday, and he didn't know he had it, and he has a big fatty liver. And so we're going to talk about it at the next appointment. But then what there is to do is to figure out, do you have any scarring? Is there any fibrosis that's occurred yet? And if there is, then there's some other things to do. There are some medications that we can use, especially if you have diabetes. There are some interventions, because this is a kind of a relatively new thing, a new disease process that we've learned about like in the last maybe 10 years or a little less, that there are now some medications that you can do, but you usually will need to go see a liver specialist. There's also a series of blood tests to do to make sure that there's no other cause.
Okay.
That was kind of a lot of information.
Yeah, that's all right.
Sorry.
So do you want to talk about the complications or prevention?
Yeah, so I would say that the scariest thing with this is that it can lead to cirrhosis. And like I mentioned before, cirrhosis is an irreversible, really usually a terminal condition once it gets to a certain stage of cirrhosis. Not all levels of cirrhosis are that bad. But so about 5 to 12%, so maybe call it like 10% of people that have NASH, which is, so basically you have NAFLD, which just means, oh, you have fatty liver. And then you do some testing to know if you have NASH, which means do you have this steatohepatitis. And then if you do have that, or especially if you have some fibrosis, you have a chance of then going on to cirrhosis. And especially diabetic women I've seen that more, and it's a big deal. And this is happening in people that are, maybe in their 50s and, 60s, early 60s. So it's not like it's happening when you're elderly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's the main complication is cirrhosis, which nobody wants to have.
Got it. Well, anybody listening I'm sure is going to want to know, like, how do I prevent this?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do is, it can be a common human trait for us to want to put our head in the sand and not want to think about it and not want to deal with it. But I would encourage you. What I have found is people who stay at home worrying, and when they finally come in, there is always a sense of relief that they know what's going on, that they're taking control of their life, and it's a very easy blood test to do. Usually, if you have a normal liver testing on blood work, you're not going to have this. You don't have this condition. So that would be the first thing to do, is you would ask your doctor or your provider, do you think I could have fatty liver? I think I have some risk factors. Have you tested my liver? Has my liver been tested? And if your transaminases or the ALT, AST, if there's anything out of whack with your liver, I would ask for an ultrasound. If you have, insurance and you can pay for it, be like, let's look at my liver with an ultrasound, because sometimes it can be a little sneaky and the levels on the blood aren't always as high anyway. So I would just talk to your provider about it. And if you know that you have diabetes and you're not paying attention to your control, there are so many complications of uncontrolled diabetes, and this is another one of them. Also, it's not even necessarily just being overweight, but it's eating a lot of sugars and carbs and having high triglycerides. So I just talked to someone the other day. It's like, it's not as much about the weight usually. It's about the lifestyle the diet that you're choosing. So even if you still are a bit overweight, but you exercised and you ate lots of veggies and lots of, whole foods, and you're not eating a lot of carbs, then your liver will be happier. So controlling your diabetes, knowing if you have prediabetes or fatty liver, and just getting on the train of a whole food diet, exercise, taking good care of yourself.
Yeah.
And avoiding and limiting your alcohol, I would say too.
So once again, we come back to lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. This is the common theme.
Yeah, and I think there's a move in medicine to kind of get away from like BMI shaming, and I totally get that. And I actually have never been one that's gotten on that train that much about, oh, your BMI. But I always stress with my patients, and I see a lot of women and a lot of postmenopausal women, and it's a difficult struggle, that just stay active and eat a healthy diet, and you don't need to care about the scale as much. See what it can do first, just by changing your diet and level of activity. And then you could work with your doctor and be like, do I really need to lose weight, or are these changes enough?
I want to add something to that, because I think people, when they hear like change my lifestyle, it doesn't have to be anything radical at first, just taking baby steps, right?
Yeah, I would take baby steps and make it like making sure that you're doing vegetables. If you're not doing any vegetables, do them at one meal. And then, okay, let's start doing them at 2 meals. Okay, let's maybe double. Like, eating more veggies is a win-win always, because it makes you full, so you eat less of the other stuff. It has so many good things in it. It has no carbs usually. So, and you can roast them, you can saute them, you can do all kinds of things with them. So I would learn, if you're not eating vegetables, I would start, increasing that, or adding them and then increasing them. Looking up how to cook vegetables so they're tasty. Yeah.
And then exercise, just start with a short walk. If you're not doing any exercise, walk around the block.
Yeah.
We're not saying you got to go out and run a marathon.
Yeah, sometimes that gap seems so big that it can be overwhelming and discouraging.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right, anything else before we wrap up?
No, just that this is it's a findable thing. It's easy to find with a blood test and an ultrasound. So I would just encourage you to reach out with your provider if you aren't sure how your liver's doing.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, it's time to get out there. Be a source of kindness, be a source of contribution. You do have something to offer this world, and we believe in you.